The sea is ancient. Its waves rise and fall like breaths from a world older than memory itself. Beneath the shifting tides, mysteries hide in silence, waiting to be heard by those who listen. Legends speak of gods who shape the waters, carving beauty and power into every current and tide. Among them, Poseidon ruled, lord of oceans, storms, and secrets kept in the deepest blue. His trident touched the waves, and the sea obeyed, carrying his voice across endless horizons. Yet beyond mortal sight, whispers tell of a realm hidden far beneath the rolling surface. A kingdom forgotten by time, luminous and alive, where harmony reigned between beings of sea and sky. Some say it was built by Poseidon himself, a gift born from solitude and longing for joy. Others believe it was a dream of the ocean, given form through music and light. Whatever its truth, the story remains, carried in the salt air, echoing through centuries. Tonight, we journey into that myth, following currents of memory into the unknown deep. Close your eyes, hear the waves, and let the ocean guide you into Poseidon's forgotten kingdom. The sea has always called to humankind. Its sound is endless, a heartbeat echoing across the shores of time. Every wave that breaks upon the sand carries a secret, a memory older than the land itself. Sailors speak of the sea as if it were alive, whispering to them in voices they could never escape. Some said the sea was kind, guiding their ships gently home through storms and shadow. Others said it was cruel, luring them deeper into its embrace until no light remained above. But always, the sea was more than water. It was mystery, and mystery is what drew mortals near. Children would stand by the shore, staring at the endless horizon, wondering what lay beyond the blue. Fishermen spoke of creatures rising with the dawn, their shapes glimmering in silver light. Poets wrote verses of the waves as though they were dreams too vast for ink to hold. And far beneath it all, hidden in caverns no diver could reach, Poseidon watched in silence. He was not a stranger to those who feared him, nor to those who praised him with offerings. Temples were built on cliffs, where priests lifted their voices toward the restless waters. The god of the sea was both protector and storm, blessing and trial, always vast and unshaken. To mortals, he was a force untamed, but to the sea itself, he was its beating heart. From the foam of the waves to the darkest trenches, his presence moved like an unseen tide. The call of the sea was not only the sound of waves, but the voice of its god. Poseidon's whispers echoed in the dreams of sailors who slept under open skies. Some woke with tears, remembering melodies they could not explain. Some woke with fear, hearing thunder that had never broken in the night. In every village by the coast, stories of the sea grew like vines, passed down from voice to voice. Children learned to respect the waters before they learned to swim. Elders warned that the sea remembered every word spoken in anger or in prayer. For the ocean was not silent. It listened, it answered, and it always carried a will of its own. And in those whispers, those unseen answers, lay the first traces of a deeper story. The call of the sea was not just to lure mortals. It was to remind them of something forgotten. Long before maps were drawn, before kingdoms rose upon the earth, the sea had its own realm. It was a realm of wonders, hidden beyond the reach of time and guarded by its master. Poseidon knew of its beauty, for it was born of his longing and his solitude. But before that tale can be told, the call itself must be understood. Imagine standing at the edge of the world, the ocean stretching farther than sight allows. Waves crash, then retreat, leaving behind a rhythm as steady as your own breath. The sound is ancient, older than mountains, older than the stars seen above. It speaks without words, and yet every listener feels its meaning deep within. This is the call of the sea, to remind all who hear it that they are part of something greater. It is not a voice of conquest or of fear, but of belonging, of return. For the sea is not separate from the world, but the origin of it. Its depths cradle secrets that shape the beginning of life itself. To listen to the sea is to remember that every drop of water once carried the memory of creation. Poseidon, lord of this boundless realm, understood the power of that call. He did not need to speak in words, for the waves themselves were his language. Every tide was a message, every storm a reminder, every calm morning a blessing. To those who sailed with respect, the sea opened paths clear and true. To those who challenged it with arrogance, the sea taught humility in its endless ways. The call of the sea shaped not only the lives of mortals, but their very stories. For without the sea, there would be no journey, no discovery, no dream of horizons. It is in the sea's voice that myths begin, where Poseidon's presence is felt most strongly. And so, as we begin our journey, listen not only with your ears, but with your heart. For the call of the sea is eternal, and through it, the forgotten kingdom waits. Legends are not born in silence. They rise from whispers carried on the wind and the roar of the waves. The forgotten kingdom was one such legend, spoken in fragments by sailors who dared to dream aloud. They told of a realm far beneath the deepest waters, hidden from the eyes of mortals and kings alike. It was not marked on maps, nor written in scrolls, for no hand had ever charted its secret path. Instead, it lived in memory, passed from elder to child as bedtime tales of wonder and awe. Fishermen spoke of glowing towers beneath the sea, shimmering like stars in the ocean's heart. Travelers recalled voices in the tide, harmonies too pure to belong to anything of this world. And always, the stories returned to Poseidon, the lord whose hand shaped the hidden kingdom. Some claimed he created it to guard treasures not meant for mortal eyes. Others said it was a sanctuary, where peace reigned even as storms raged above. There were whispers of merfolk dancing in halls of coral, their laughter brighter than pearls. There were songs of gardens lit by drifting lanternfish, blooming in colors no artist could capture. Every version was different, yet every telling carried the same truth. It was a place of harmony, not a kingdom built on conquest, but on balance, where every creature knew its role in the song. The dolphins leapt in joy, the whales hummed their deep voices, and the smallest fish glittered like jewels. Even the seaweed swayed as if it danced, weaving music into the silence of the deep. Mortals who listened to these tales longed to see it, though none could find the path. The ocean itself seemed to protect the secret, veiling the entrance with endless tides. Storms rose suddenly to block explorers, while currents pulled ships away from their destination. It was as though Poseidon himself chose who might glimpse his forgotten realm. Those few who claimed to have seen it returned forever changed, their words trembling with awe. They spoke not of gold or power, but of a beauty so great it silenced the soul. They described palaces carved from coral, glowing softly in the shadows of the abyss. They described pearl staircases rising like moonlight, guiding the way through gardens of light. And always there was the sound, the music of the deep, carried on the waves like a hymn. No instrument could play it, no mortal voice could capture it. It was the sea itself, singing in chorus with its god. In villages by the shore, these tales grew into songs sung by mothers to their children. They reminded them that the ocean was not only power, but also kindness and wonder. That beneath its storms lay beauty untold, hidden not out of cruelty, but out of care. For Poseidon did not wish his kingdom to be broken by mortal greed. He veiled it with currents, cloaked it with tides, and let it survive in story alone. Thus, the forgotten kingdom lived on, not in sight, but in faith. It became a dream carried by sailors who listened to the sea's voice with open hearts. It became a hope for those who feared storms, believing there was calm somewhere beyond. And though centuries passed, the legend did not fade. It echoed in the salt wind, in the rhythm of waves, in the silence between tides. It waited like a song unended for those who dared to believe. For myths are not merely stories. They are promises, hidden in plain sight. And the promise of the forgotten kingdom was this: harmony is real, if you know where to listen. So when the sea called, it was not only waves or storms that answered. It was the voice of a hidden realm, waiting, eternal, beneath the endless blue. Poseidon was mighty, yet even might can carry a shadow of solitude. He ruled the seas with authority, yet silence often lingered in his vast domain. For mortals feared him more than they loved him, offering prayers mixed with trembling. They built temples, cast gifts into the waters, but seldom did they speak with joy. They sought safety, not closeness, asking the sea to spare rather than to embrace. And Poseidon, though honored, felt the distance between himself and those who prayed. He was lord of storms, shaper of tides. Yet what he longed for was gentler. The sea was endless, alive with motion. Yet to him, it sometimes felt empty. He watched dolphins leap, whales sing, and schools of fish shimmer like drifting stars. But none of these could answer the deeper longing that stirred within his heart. For gods, like mortals, can feel the weight of isolation, though they seldom admit it. Poseidon dreamed of voices not trembling, but joyful, voices rising in laughter and song. He wished for a place where fear did not silence the beauty of the sea. And so he wandered through his vast kingdom, searching for harmony he had not found. He swam past forests of kelp that waved like emerald banners in the current. He passed through canyons where ancient stones whispered of time older than memory. He listened to the lull of tides that rolled against hidden mountains of coral. Yet none of these answered the yearning that grew stronger with every tide. Above the surface, mortals lived in kingdoms of light, filled with fire and song. Poseidon watched them from afar, seeing their feasts, their stories, their shared joy. And though their lives were fleeting, they carried something eternal, the warmth of togetherness. This warmth was missing in his boundless waters, where silence reigned too often. The sea was his, but it was vast, and vastness can sometimes feel hollow. What is power, he wondered, if it cannot be shared in joy? What is dominion, if it is met only with fear and trembling? These thoughts lingered like echoes, following him into the deepest caverns of the sea. There, in the dark where no mortal eye could see, he sat in stillness. He thought of the prayers offered on cliffs, the voices asking only for mercy. He thought of ships breaking on waves, of mortals cursing his storms in despair. And he thought of the few who listened, who spoke softly to the waves with wonder. They were rare, but they gave him hope that mortals could see the sea as gift. From this hope, the dream of a new kingdom began to form in his heart. Not a kingdom of conquest, nor of punishment, but of light and harmony. A place where sea and spirit met, where beauty could live without fear. He envisioned halls carved not by stone, but by coral, alive and breathing. He dreamed of gardens glowing with fish that carried lanterns in their bodies. He imagined laughter echoing through caverns, joined by songs of whales and merfolk. And in this vision, his solitude faded, replaced by a sense of belonging. The sea would no longer be a place of fear, but a sanctuary of wonder. He would not abandon storms, for storms were part of him, but he would balance them. For every wave that roared, there would be another that sang in gentleness. For every storm that shook the surface, there would be a light that glowed below. This was the kingdom Poseidon dreamed, a place that could heal the silence of the sea. And though it was still only a vision, already it began to take shape. The sea itself seemed to listen, currents stirring as if awaiting his command. The creatures of the deep paused, sensing something new moving in the water. It was not storm, nor tide, nor quake. It was gentleness, a rare gift from the sea. Poseidon rose from the depths, his heart no longer heavy with solitude. For he knew the sea would not remain silent forever. He would craft a kingdom of harmony, born from his longing for joy. And one day, mortals would speak not only of his storms, but of his gift. A kingdom where his solitude ended and the sea itself began to sing. From the silence of his longing, Poseidon began to create. The vision in his heart called to the sea, and the sea answered with willing hands. He touched the waters with his trident, and the depth stirred like a dream awakening. Mountains of coral rose from the ocean floor, glowing with hues no mortal eye had seen. They curved into arches and towers, alive and breathing, shaped by tide and time. Pearls the size of lanterns formed, resting in shells that opened like gentle stars. Streams of silver fish darted between pillars, their scales scattering light in dancing patterns. The kingdom began as a song, every note woven from wave, stone, and breath. Poseidon did not carve alone, for the ocean itself seemed eager to join the making. Currents shaped winding halls, swirling gently into chambers vast as cathedrals. Sea glass settled into windows, reflecting glimmers of light like fragments of dawn. The earth below gave forth minerals that gleamed like jewels, filling walls with radiant veins. It was not a fortress of war, but a sanctuary of harmony, carved by nature and God alike. Poseidon walked through the forming halls, his presence filling them with warmth. Where he stepped, gardens bloomed, kelp unfurling, anemones blossoming in sudden color. He dreamed of a throne not to command, but to welcome, set upon coral carved like waves. And so it was shaped, not in gold or stone, but in living reef that never ceased to grow. Above, great domes of water arched, clear and shimmering with drifting lights. Lanternfish swam in spirals, forming constellations that mirrored the sky above. It was as if the heavens themselves had sunk into the sea, alive in every corner. The creatures of the deep came forth, not in fear, but drawn by the new harmony. Whales sang hymns that echoed in the chambers, their voices filling the kingdom with peace. Dolphins leapt in joy through arches, weaving playfulness into the solemn halls. Even the smallest shells opened, releasing tiny sparks of light like stars scattered on sand. Each being became part of the making, as if the kingdom welcomed them home. Poseidon watched in silence, yet within him stirred a feeling he had never known. It was not pride alone, but wonder, as if even he was surprised by what grew. The sea was no longer endless emptiness. It was alive, radiant, and complete. He gave the kingdom a heart, a fountain where waters flowed in eternal rhythm. It pulsed like the beat of a drum, steady, alive, connecting every hall and garden. From this fountain spread warmth, a gentle current that wrapped every corner with peace. Mortals, though distant, would one day feel this warmth in calm seas and guiding tides. For the kingdom was not hidden in cruelty, but placed where it could still be felt. Its beauty was not for eyes alone, but for hearts willing to listen to the ocean's voice. And so the forgotten kingdom was born, a creation both divine and natural. A place where solitude gave way to song, where silence bloomed into music. Poseidon stood in its center, no longer lord of storms alone, but guardian of harmony.
By the power of the sea,
He looked upon what had risen and felt the loneliness in his heart dissolve. For here was not only a kingdom, but a promise. The sea could be more than fear. It could be beauty, refuge, and light, held safe beneath the ever-shifting tides. Thus, the birth of the kingdom was complete, not in stone, but in living wonder, a sanctuary for creatures of the deep, and a secret gift for those who still believed. And though it would one day fade from mortal sight, it would never fade from memory. For once a kingdom is born of longing and love, it can never truly be lost. The kingdom grew, and with it came the need for life beyond silence and stone. Poseidon's heart longed for voices, for laughter to echo within the coral halls. The sea, sensing his desire, stirred again, weaving forms from foam and light. From the shimmer of waves, beings began to rise, neither mortal nor divine. They were the children of the ocean, born of tide and song, radiant and free. Their eyes held the sparkle of starlight, and their hair flowed like seaweed in currents. Their laughter rang like chimes struck by gentle winds, filling the kingdom with warmth. Poseidon welcomed them not as subjects, but as companions in his living sanctuary. He taught them the rhythm of waves, the pulse that binds sea and sky. They learned quickly, moving with grace, their steps like ripples upon still water. Some tended gardens of coral, coaxing blossoms to glow with vibrant hues. Others sang to the whales, weaving harmony into their deep, rolling songs. Children played among dolphins, leaping through arches of light with endless joy. Every corner of the kingdom breathed with life, no longer silent or still. The beings wove music into every chamber, songs rising like tides each dawn. Their voices blended with the hum of currents, creating hymns older than memory. In their company, Poseidon felt a warmth unknown even to the sunlit seas. No longer alone, he walked among them, not a distant god, but a guiding hand. He saw in them the reflection of his longing, companionship, belonging, love. They called him Father, though not in blood, but in spirit, born of his vision. And Poseidon, once stern and solitary, smiled often, his heart softened by their presence. The kingdom flourished, alive with color, sound, and endless harmony. Creatures from distant depths came, drawn by the radiant balance of this place. Sharks swam peacefully beside schools of fish, their hunger quieted by the kingdom's peace. Sea turtles rested beneath coral arches, undisturbed, basking in gentle currents. Even the restless winds above calmed, as storms hesitated to break upon its borders. For within this hidden realm, balance reigned, a rare gift in the endless sea. Legends say mortals once glimpsed it, sailors drifting too far into the unknown. They returned with tales of glowing towers, of voices rising from beneath the waves. Many dismissed these stories as dreams, illusions shaped by hunger and salt air. Yet those who truly listened felt the pull of the sea, as if it whispered truth. The kingdom remained hidden, not out of cruelty, but to protect its fragile harmony. For mortals carried greed as easily as hope, and greed would fracture what love had built. Poseidon knew this, and so he veiled the kingdom in mystery, a secret kept by tides. But he allowed its songs to rise, drifting to distant shores like forgotten prayers. Those who heard them often wept, though they knew not why their hearts ached. Perhaps they touched the memory of a world more whole, more gentle than their own. Within the kingdom, time flowed differently, soft and endless like a lullaby. Seasons passed above, yet below the coral halls remained ever vibrant, ever alive. The children of the sea grew wise, keepers of stories, singers of eternal hymns. And Poseidon, watching them, felt the weight of eternity lighten on his shoulders. He had created more than a refuge. He had birthed a family, a living dream. And in their joy, he found his own heart healed, its emptiness finally filled. Thus the forgotten kingdom was not forgotten at all, not to the sea nor its children. It lived, hidden and radiant, a secret promise beneath the waves. And so its story drifted on, whispered by tides, sung by whales, carried by wind. A song of creation, of belonging, of love that endures beyond time itself. The kingdom, though hidden, began to echo beyond its borders. Its harmony was so radiant that even distant seas felt the gentle touch of its song. Currents carried whispers of its light, weaving them into tides that kissed faraway shores. Mortals, adrift on the ocean, sometimes felt a calm they could not name. Sailors spoke of nights when the sea glowed softly, guiding them through storm and shadow. They believed it was a blessing from Poseidon, though they never saw the true source. The forgotten kingdom remained unseen, yet its spirit touched the hearts of wanderers. The ocean, vast and restless, now held within it a heart of balance. Even storms seemed gentler when they drifted near, their fury softened by hidden peace. The children of the sea learned this balance, guarding it with devotion and care. They were more than companions. They became stewards, keepers of the kingdom's promise. Each child carried a gift, shaped by the ocean's will and Poseidon's quiet blessing. Some could calm the fiercest currents with a whisper, turning chaos into harmony. Others spoke with creatures of the deep, weaving trust between predator and prey. A few carried the gift of song so powerful it could heal sorrow and fear. Their voices echoed in choral chambers, rising like dawn over endless waters. Together, they wove a symphony, each gift a note in the kingdom's eternal hymn. Poseidon watched with pride, his heart no longer heavy with solitude. He saw in them a reflection of what the sea itself desired, unity in diversity. For in the endless ocean, no single wave held power, but together they formed the tide. So too did the children, each unique yet woven into one living harmony. The kingdom grew stronger, not in walls or weapons, but in love and trust. Even the whales carried its song into the farthest reaches of the ocean. Their deep voices rolled like thunder, carrying peace across thousands of miles. Dolphins leapt joyfully, spreading laughter to distant waters like sparks of light. Every creature that touched the kingdom carried a fragment of its radiance outward. And so the sea itself became a messenger, carrying whispers of paradise unknown. Mortals on distant coasts heard the sea sing, though they could not explain the sound. Some wept, others smiled, as if their souls remembered something lost but familiar. It was the kingdom's promise, reaching across worlds, touching even those who had never seen it. Poseidon knew the risk of such beauty, that it could draw longing, envy, desire. But he trusted in the veil of tides, in the mystery that kept the kingdom safe. Its heart beat in rhythm with the sea, hidden yet eternal, beyond mortal grasp. The children asked him why they must remain unseen, their gifts concealed from the world. Poseidon answered softly, telling them the ocean was vast, but hearts were fragile. "Not all are ready," he said. to see beauty without wanting to own it. The children understood, though their eyes often wandered to the surface with wonder. They dreamed of skies, of sunlight warming waters beyond the veil. Yet they remained, for they knew the kingdom was sacred and its harmony must endure. Time flowed like a gentle river, unbroken, carrying their lives in quiet circles. Generations passed within the forgotten kingdom, yet none felt the sting of age. For here, time was not a burden, but a companion, steady and forgiving. Poseidon himself seemed changed, less the stern god of storms, more a guardian of peace. He laughed with the children, listened to their songs, and shared in their dreams. The sea, once his lonely dominion, had become a family, a living legacy. And though the world above rushed on with battles, storms, and fleeting empires, below, in the secret kingdom, harmony endured, unshaken, eternal as the tides. This was Poseidon's gift, not only to the sea but to all who could still believe. A promise that even in the vast unknown, peace could bloom and endure. Above the waters, the world moved on. Kingdoms rose and fell like tides. Mortals built ships of wood and cloth, chasing horizons that stretched beyond their sight. They sailed with courage, yet also with hunger for lands, treasures, and unspoken power. Unaware of the realm below, they carved paths across oceans with restless desire. But sometimes, in their journeys, they felt something stir within the waves. A calm in the storm, a glow in the night, a song that lingered in their dreams. They called it luck, or blessing. But few guessed the truth of what touched them. It was the forgotten kingdom, reaching gently, unseen, like a hand guiding the lost. Poseidon watched from below, his heart torn between pride and caution. He loved mortals, their spirit and daring, but he feared their greed and recklessness. The children of the sea often asked about the world above, curious and bright. They dreamed of skies painted with stars, of sunrises spilling gold across the waters. Poseidon told them stories, not of power, but of wonder, so their hearts would learn. He spoke of rivers that sang through valleys, of mountains crowned with snow and silence. He told them of forests that breathed, of fields that glowed with endless flowers. The children listened wide-eyed, their imaginations painting worlds they had never seen. Some longed to rise, to glimpse the beauty their father described with such care. But they stayed, for they understood the weight of their promise, to guard the kingdom. Their gifts were not meant for conquest, but for harmony, and they cherished that truth. Still, sometimes at night, they gathered by the surface, peering at distant stars. They sang softly to the moon, their voices weaving silver threads across the waves. And the moon listened, sending down beams of light that danced upon the sea. In those moments, the veil between worlds felt thin, almost fragile, almost open. Poseidon stood apart, watching with both love and worry, knowing time was shifting. For mortals were growing bolder, their sails larger, their voyages farther than before. Whispers reached him of ships daring into the deep, carried by winds unyielding. And though they had not yet found his hidden sanctuary, he felt the pull of change. The ocean could no longer remain untouched by mortal ambition and wandering hearts. The children sensed it too, the currents stirring with questions, the tides restless. Some feared discovery, others dreamed of it, longing to bridge the worlds at last. Poseidon knew that choice was not simple, for beauty revealed could invite ruin. Still, he believed in balance, and balance meant that one day the veil might lift. The forgotten kingdom was not meant to be lost forever, only guarded until time was right. And so he waited, with patience as deep as the sea, watching the world above. He prayed that when the moment came, mortals would meet the kingdom with open hearts. The sea held many faces, gentle, fierce, silent, roaring, and so too did mankind. But within every soul, Poseidon knew, was the same longing for belonging and peace. The challenge was whether mortals could see, not with eyes, but with their hearts. The kingdom below glowed with life, eternal and bright, ready to share its song. And above, the stars watched in silence, as if keeping the secret between heaven and sea. For stories were threads, and one day, those threads would weave the two worlds together. Until then, the kingdom waited, breathing softly beneath the tides, unseen but never absent. And Poseidon, lord of the deep, guardian of harmony, listened to both silence and song. For he knew destiny, like the ocean, could not be held back forever. It always found a shore. In the stillness of dawn, the sea lay calm, like glass stretching to the edges of the world. The forgotten kingdom glimmered beneath, untouched, alive with its own rhythm and light. But above, mortal sails gathered on horizons, daring to press farther into unknown waters. The winds carried them, restless and bold, while whispers of myth guided their wandering paths. They spoke of treasures buried deep, of gods watching, of secrets resting in the ocean's heart. Among them was a young sailor named Callis, whose dreams burned brighter than the stars. He listened to old stories, not for riches, but for wonder, for truths beyond stone and soil. His eyes sought the horizon not with greed, but with the yearning of a poet's soul. On nights when his ship rocked gently, he heard songs drifting across the moonlit sea, soft, delicate, woven with longing, like voices not quite human yet not entirely distant. He asked his captain, "Do you hear them?" But the man only laughed and turned away. To most, the sea was only danger or bounty, but to Callis, it was alive, breathing. He felt its moods in the waves, its secrets in the currents, its promise in the winds. Unseen, Poseidon watched him, curious, for the boy's spirit carried a rare kind of purity. Not all mortals were blind to beauty. Some still looked with open hearts, without hunger for gain. The god felt a stirring within, a question that lingered like the echo of a tide. Could this mortal be the one to see the kingdom not as conquest, but as kinship? Meanwhile, the children of the sea sensed his presence through the currents that brushed their gates. They gathered in wonder, speaking softly of a sailor whose soul shimmered like a flame. One child asked, "Father, is he dangerous?" Poseidon shook his head, his voice calm as waves. "No, not dangerous. But destiny has a way of weaving paths none can foresee." The kingdom grew restless with anticipation, as if the waters themselves knew change approached. Creatures of coral sang more brightly, dolphins leapt higher, currents carried warmth through the depths. It was as though the sea prepared itself, whispering a welcome to a guest not yet arrived. Callis, unaware, continued his journey, driven by a pull he could not name or resist. The stars seemed to guide him, and even storms broke softly around his ship's wooden frame. He began to write his visions, sketching symbols of light, waves, and unknown cities of gold. His shipmates mocked him gently, calling him a dreamer, but he only smiled and listened. For within his heart, he knew the sea was speaking, and he had to listen closely. Poseidon pondered deeply, torn between secrecy and revelation, between fear and hope for the future. The kingdom had been hidden for centuries, its harmony preserved by silence and restraint. But what if this mortal could walk its gardens, hear its songs, and not bring ruin? What if he could be the bridge, the first step toward balance between sea and land. The god weighed the choice, each thought rolling like thunder through the chambers of his heart. And as dawn broke, Poseidon raised his gaze toward the horizon, where Callis's ship sailed onward. The moment was coming when veil and tide would tremble, when myth and mortal would meet. The kingdom below shone brighter that day, as though preparing for its own unveiling. And above, Callis dreamed again, of voices calling, of a light beneath the waves, waiting. The story of sea and sailor was no longer drifting. It was beginning to take form. The sea shifted with purpose, as though destiny itself flowed within its rolling waves. Callis stood on the deck at dusk, watching the horizon burn with fading gold and crimson. The air carried a strange hush, as if the world held its breath, waiting for something unseen. He felt it deep inside, a pull stronger than compass or star, guiding him toward the unknown. The ship creaked under gentle waves, the sails filled with whispers of winds not born of chance. Callis closed his eyes and listened, his heart pounding with both fear and wonder, like a child. In his dreams, the voices grew clearer, forming words that echoed softly against the walls of his mind. They spoke of harmony, of light, of a place beneath waters where silence turned into music. He awoke with tears in his eyes, though he could not explain why to himself or others. The crew muttered of omens, some uneasy with the sailor who seemed to court the sea's will. But Callis was undeterred, for every current felt like a hand guiding him with gentle care. Below in the kingdom, the children of Poseidon gathered once more. Sensing the approach of change, they felt his spirit as a shimmer, a flicker of light carried in the deep, rolling tides. "Father," one asked, "will he truly come here, to the place no mortal has ever walked?" Poseidon gazed into the far distance, his trident resting quietly, his eyes filled with tides of thought. "The sea calls to those who listen," he answered, his voice low and deep as thunder. And when one listens with a pure heart, the sea itself answers in ways none expect. The kingdom prepared, though not with walls or weapons, but with songs and shimmering lights of welcome. Coral gardens glowed brighter, fish danced in spirals, currents wove gentle melodies through the hidden streets. It was not fear that moved them, but hope. The hope that the world above might finally hear. Callis, on the deck, scribbled again in his worn book, lines flowing faster than his hand. He wrote of visions, towers of crystal rising from sand, gates of pearl, voices that carried peace. The more he wrote, the more real it felt, as if memory, not imagination, guided his pen. He whispered to himself, "It's there. I know it's there. The sea would not lie to me." Unseen, Poseidon listened, a flicker of pride touching his immortal heart, for mortals rarely trusted so deeply. And yet, within that pride was caution, for love of beauty could easily turn into desire. He remembered past ages when men reached for what was sacred and broke what they could not hold. But this boy was different, his gaze softer, his dreams woven with reverence instead of hunger. Above, the stars brightened, as if keeping watch, marking the turning of destiny's unseen wheel. Below, the kingdom pulsed with anticipation, its very waters glowing with an unspoken promise of change. The night deepened, but Callis could not sleep, pacing the deck with eyes fixed on the sea. At last, he whispered into the wind, "If you are real, show me. I am not afraid." The waves lapped gently, and far below, a soft shimmer answered, rising and fading like breath. He gasped, unsure if he dreamed, but his heart leapt with certainty, stronger than any proof. Somewhere in the silence, Poseidon smiled faintly, knowing the veil between worlds was thinning at last. The first step had been taken, not with sails or ships, but with faith and an open heart. And so the story pressed forward, carried by tide and time, toward a meeting long awaited. The sea had chosen, and neither mortal nor god could halt the course that had begun. The dawn rose soft and silver, its light spilling across the waves like a quiet promise. Callis leaned over the railing, his eyes heavy with sleepless wonder, his heart still racing. The shimmer he had seen haunted him, a vision more real than any dream he had known. He whispered to himself, "It was there. I know it was there." Clinging to hope like breath. The sea rolled calm beneath him, yet every ripple felt alive, pulsing with unseen intention. The crew busied themselves, muttering of routine, but Callis felt the ocean speaking only to him. Each gust of wind, each sigh of wave, seemed to draw him closer to something waiting below. That evening, as the sky burned crimson, he heard the voices again, clearer than ever before. They were not words of warning, but of welcome, soft as lullabies carried on salt winds. The sound filled him with warmth, a sense of home, though he had never been there. Below the waves, Poseidon watched in silence, his trident resting in the sands of his hall. He could feel the mortal's heart beating through the currents, steady and untainted by greed. His children gathered again, their voices trembling with both hope and doubt for what lay ahead. "Father, what if he fails?" one asked, her eyes wide as moonlight across dark water. Poseidon's gaze was steady, his voice calm as deep currents flowing beneath storms. "Failure belongs to those who come seeking only to take. He comes seeking to understand." The kingdom itself seemed to stir, its coral walls glowing brighter, its gardens humming with life. Every creature moved in harmony, sensing a guest, sensing the thin line between silence and revelation. Callis dreamt again that night, his visions growing clearer, painted in hues of silver and blue. He saw towers of glass rising from sand, halls of music where light itself became song. He reached out in his dream, and though he touched only water, it felt like truth. He awoke with tears upon his cheeks, whispering into the dawn, "I believe you are real." And the sea answered, not in thunder, but in the gentle hush of waves against wood. Days passed, but the pull grew stronger, the ship drifting toward waters unknown to its crew. The captain cursed the currents, but Callis only smiled, for he knew the sea was guiding. Each mile felt like a heartbeat, each night like a step closer to something sacred. Below, Poseidon stood at the gates of the kingdom, the sea parting at his command. The time had come, the veil thinning, the mortal drawing near with faith as his compass. The children gathered around him, their eyes wide, their hearts beating fast with anticipation. "Will he see us as we are?" one asked, her voice trembling like foam upon waves. Poseidon placed a hand upon her shoulder, his voice deep and kind. "He will see with his heart, not his eyes. That is enough." The sea itself grew restless, waves shimmering with light as though stars had fallen into them. Callis felt the change in his bones, an energy too vast for words, too deep for fear. He whispered again, "If you are real, I am ready." His voice carried into the wind. And far below, the gates of the forgotten kingdom stirred, their glow stretching upward through the sea. The veil was lifting, thin as mist, fragile as dawn, alive with the promise of meeting. Poseidon raised his trident, the ocean bowed, and light spread through the waters like fire. The moment was near, the story unfolding, carried by waves toward a destiny long foretold. The forgotten kingdom no longer slept. It waited, breathing, glowing, ready to welcome its first mortal. And Callis, with hope burning brighter than fear, sailed onward into the embrace of the deep. The sea glowed as though the stars themselves had fallen into its endless embrace. Callis stood at the ship's edge, his heart pounding, his eyes fixed on the shining depths. The water shimmered, rising in waves of light, and the veil between worlds grew thin. He whispered, "I am ready." And the sea answered with silence that felt like a promise. The ship rocked gently, but the crew stood in awe, their fear replaced by reverent wonder. Far below, the gates of the Forgotten Kingdom opened, coral archways glowing with ancient light. Poseidon waited within, his presence vast, his gaze calm, his heart filled with cautious hope. The children of the sea circled him, their voices weaving a song soft as drifting tides. "Father, he comes," they whispered, their eyes reflecting the glow of a world awakening. Callis felt himself pulled downward, not drowning, but embraced by water that welcomed him as kin. The sea carried him gently, lowering him into a realm more beautiful than he had dreamed. Gardens of coral shimmered like jewels, towers of pearl rose upward, fish danced in rivers of light. The kingdom was alive, radiant, breathing, as though it had waited centuries for this one moment. Poseidon stepped forward, his trident gleaming, his voice rolling like waves breaking upon the shore. "Mortal, you have listened where others turned deaf, and you have sought wonder, not conquest." Callis knelt, though no command bound him, only reverence for the god and the realm. "I came only to learn," he whispered, "to see, to understand, not to claim as my own." The god's heart stirred, for in those words lay the truth the sea had long awaited. The children of the sea gathered close, their laughter like bells, their eyes filled with delight. For the first time, they saw a mortal who did not fear, who did not demand. Instead, he gazed at them with awe, as though their existence was a gift beyond measure. Poseidon raised his trident, and the kingdom shone brighter, every coral, every stone singing with light. "You shall carry our story," he said, "not as a secret stolen, but as a gift shared." Callis bowed his head, his heart overflowing with a peace he had never known before. The god continued, "Tell them the sea is not theirs to own, but to honor and protect. Tell them it breathes, it dreams, it holds life more vast than any mortal mind can hold." The voices of the children joined his, a harmony that filled the waters with eternal song. Callis wept, not from sorrow, but from joy, his soul touched by beauty too great for words. And then, as softly as dawn, the sea lifted him back to the surface of the world. The ship rocked gently, and the crew rushed to him, their faces filled with awe and fear. But Callis only smiled, his eyes bright, his voice calm as he whispered, "I saw it." He carried no treasure, no pearl, no crown, only the story, glowing within his heart. And as the ship sailed onward, he began to tell it, each word carrying the sea's song. The Forgotten Kingdom sank again into silence, hidden once more, its secret safe beneath the waves. But it no longer slept, for its story now lived upon the tongues of mortals. Poseidon watched from below, his heart steady, knowing the choice had been right, the time fulfilled. He turned to his children and said, "The sea has spoken, and the world will learn." The waves rolled on, carrying both silence and song, as they always had, as they always would. For kingdoms may fade, and mortals may pass, but stories are tides that return again and again. And so the legend of Poseidon and the Forgotten Kingdom flowed into eternity, like the sea itself.